This is 6.4 Female Accessory Organ Notes. The essential question is, what are the female accessory organs and what are their functions? The major function of the female accessory organs is that once that the egg or the ova has been produced, it provides a passageway for it to travel and also prepares a place for it to get fertilized, then allows it to be implanted, which means that it will actually adhere to the wall of the uterus where it can develop into a baby, and then nurture the baby while it grows inside the womb, and then also provide nutrients for the baby once the baby is born. The uterine tube, also called the fallopian tube, will receive the oocyte, the mature egg, once ovulation occurs. Remember that the ovary and the uterine tube are not attached to one another, but it is attached medially to the uterus. It is the site where fertilization occurs, which means that the egg and the sperm will get together, and it will travel down to the uterus for it to be implanted in the uterus. Regions of the uterine tube, the major portion is the infundibulum, which is the cone-shaped area, and then the fimbriae are these finger-like projections that come off of the infundibulum. And what it does is that once the egg is released by the ovary, it sweeps the fimbriae sweeps the egg, the oocyte, into the uterine tube. And then cilia within the lining of the uterus is going to cause the oocyte to move down along the uterine tube to the uterus. And it takes about 3 to 4 days. The uterus located between the urinary bladder and the rectum. The urinary sits anteriorly or in front of the uterus, and the rectum sits behind or posteriorly to the uterus. It is a hollow organ, and once the uterine tube fertilizes the egg, it will travel down to the uterus, and then it will remain there. It will implant there, and then it will remain there until the baby is born. The 3 ligament that supports the uterus is the broad ligament we've talked about before. It's this huge one that anchors it to the pelvis. Then you have the round ligament that is on the top portion, which anchors it interiorly, and then uterosacral, one right here, it anchors it posteriorly because you are looking at the uterus from the backside. You can kind of see the sigmoid colon and the rectum, which is on the backside. Regions of the uterus, the main portion is called the body in the yellow. Then you have the fundus, which is the top portion in green. And then you have the cervix, which is in blue, which is the opening or the connection between the vagina and the uterus. This diagram right here is showing you the uterus looking directly anteriorly. When you go to the doctors and when you get a Pap exam and they put in the speculum, they will actually bring up the cervix so you can see it. So in a female that has not had a child, the opening will be perfectly round like a donut, but once they have a child, it will actually either become a happy face or you will see a line. There are 3 layers to the wall of the uterus. Endometrium is the most inner layer. It is the one that the fertilized egg will implant in, and also it is the layer that is shed during when there is no pregnancy and when there is menstruation. The myometrium is the muscular layer, which is very evident in when there is labor and contraction, is the contraction of the myometrial muscle layer. The perimetrium is the outer visceral layer, and it is part of the abdominal organs. The covering that is the same covering that covers the abdominal organs. So again, in the white is your endometrium, which is the inner lining. Then the thick pink layer here is from here to here is your myometrium. And then the most outer layer here that is kind of hard to even separate from the myometrium is the perimetrium. Vagina extends from the cervix all the way to the external, the vaginal opening. That's the entire area is the vagina. And it is in front of the rectum, which is in the back, and then it's behind the bladder, the urinary bladder. The vagina serves as the birth canal when delivering a baby, and also it is the receptacle for the penis during sexual intercourse. And there is a thin connective tissue covering it, which is called the hymen, which is usually broken during sexual intercourse, but any kind of strenuous exercise or activity can also rupture the hymen. The external genitalia is also called the vulva. The mons pubis is the fatty pad overlying the pubic area, and it will be covered with pubic hair after puberty. Labia is another word for lips. It's the skin folds that cover or surround the vaginal opening. There is a labia majora, which is the outer fold, and then labia minora is the inner fold. In males, those two layers of the labias will come together and will form a scrotum in the scrotal sac in the male. So the mons pubis right here would be this area right here, the top portion here, and then the labia majora would be this fold, the outer fold here would be a labia majora. Then labia minora is the inner fold, right around the vaginal opening. Another area is the perineum, which is the skin between the vaginal opening and the anus, and this is the area usually cut during episiotomy when the vaginal opening is not big enough for the baby's head to come through. Vestibule is the area on the inside of the labia majora. It contains the opening through the urethra, and then it has a gland called the greater vestibular or Bartholin's gland, and it is kind of the same type of function as the bulbourethral gland or the Cowper's gland in the males. It produces mucus to reduce friction and then to neutralize the acid in the vaginal secretion. And then clitoris is equivalent to the male penis, and it contains erectile tissue, which means that it can achieve erection during sexual arousal. So the clitoris would be this area here. Then you have the vestibule, which is this entire area surrounding around this area all around here, this area inside the labia majora, and then that also contains the urethral opening, which is right here. That's where the urine will come out of. And on either side of the vaginal opening here will be a duct for the greater vestibular gland or the Bartholin's gland, which produces and secretes mucus that's going to reduce friction during sexual intercourse and to neutralize the acid of the vaginal secretions. The mammary glands are for after birth. It provides nutrients for the developing baby after it's given birth. And then there are the mammary glands are found in both sexes. It's just that in males that it does not develop fully to be able to produce milk. And milk will exit through the area called the nipple. And then the darker area, that darker colored area around the nipple is called the areola, which is the colored portion of the nipple. The hormone that is responsible for milk production is prolactin, but remember the hormone that is responsible for milk coming in is oxytocin, which is also the hormone that is responsible for beginning the process of childbirth. 16.4 notes homework. Number 1, what are the functions of the uterine tube and the vagina? Number 2, describe the structure of the uterus and its functions. Number 3, describe the major structures of the female external genitalia and their locations.